The world was presented with a carefully constructed narrative about Jeffrey Epstein, a narrative designed to simplify a complex and deeply unsettling reality. It was a story that many were willing to accept at face value, eager to move on from a disturbing chapter. A narrative of a wealthy financier who experienced a dramatic fall from grace, a cautionary tale of hubris and its consequences. This was the story that dominated headlines and shaped public perception. He mingled with presidents, moving effortlessly through the highest echelons of power, princes gaining access to circles most could only dream of. His connections seemed limitless, his influence vast, and industry titans cultivating relationships that solidified his position and amplified his reach. He was a man who knew everyone who mattered, using his power and private island, a secluded sanctuary where the rules seemed not to apply, to commit horrific crimes shielded by wealth and influence for far too long. The media, often complicit in shaping public opinion, focused primarily on the salacious details, sensationalizing the story for maximum impact. The island, a symbol of unchecked power and hidden depravity. The jet, a means of transportation that facilitated his heinous activities, earning it the chilling moniker, the Lolita Express. The eventual arrest, a moment that many believed would finally bring closure to the victims and hold those responsible accountable. We were led to believe justice was finally being served, that the system, after years of apparent indifference, was finally working. After years of failure, after countless missed opportunities to intervene and protect the vulnerable, Epstein was painted as the sole mastermind, the architect of this elaborate web of abuse and exploitation, with Ghislaine Maxwell as his loyal accomplice, the facilitator who helped him navigate the complex social landscape and procure victims. The victims' voices were finally heard, their stories of trauma and resilience finally given a platform. But the narrative remained tightly contained, carefully controlled to prevent the exposure of uncomfortable truths. Outrage was directed at one man, focusing the public's anger on a single individual, making the problem seem solvable by removing him, suggesting that his demise would somehow eradicate the underlying issues. But this story was just the tip of the iceberg, a carefully curated version of events designed to conceal a much larger and more sinister reality. The 2019 arrest was presented as the end, the final chapter in a disturbing saga, ignoring decades of warnings, of red flags that were deliberately overlooked or dismissed, and powerful enablers, those who facilitated his crimes and benefited from his network. The narrative offered closure, a sense that justice had been served and the matter was resolved, without examining the institutions, the systems of power that allowed him to operate with impunity for so long, that protected him, providing a buffer against scrutiny and accountability. It isolated the guilty, focusing blame on a select few individuals, shielding the powerful from scrutiny, preventing a deeper investigation into the network of complicity. The real story, the one beneath the surface, hidden from public view, was about to unravel, threatening to expose the uncomfortable truths that powerful forces had worked so hard to conceal. The truth was far more disturbing, more complex, and more far-reaching than the story we were told, a story designed to protect the powerful and silence the victims. Beyond the official story, beyond the carefully crafted narratives, lies a darker, more disturbing reality, a truth that powerful forces have desperately tried to keep hidden. It wasn't just about one man's twisted desires, it was about a network, a complex web of influence and connections that spanned across industries and continents. Epstein's crimes weren't committed in a vacuum. They were enabled, facilitated, and protected by a sprawling web of power, a network of individuals who benefited from his activities. This complicity reached the highest levels of society, implicating individuals in positions of authority and influence who should have been safeguarding the vulnerable. The headlines, the carefully managed media coverage, shielded us from the full extent of the truth, painting a picture that was far from complete. Epstein was merely a symptom, a manifestation of a deeper sickness that has infected our institutions, eroding trust and undermining the very foundations of justice. This wasn't just about sex crimes, as horrific as they were. It was about something far more insidious. It was about blackmail, control, and the calculated mechanics of power, a system designed to exploit and manipulate individuals for the benefit of a select few. We must ask ourselves, why was Epstein so wealthy? Where did his money come from? And who was funding his lavish lifestyle? Who frequented his properties, his private island, his mansions? What transpired behind those closed doors, and what secrets were hidden within those walls? The answers, if we dare to seek them, point to a pervasive culture of corruption, a rot that has spread throughout the system. It implicates the untouchable, those who have long operated with impunity, believing themselves to be above the law. Epstein's operation was far more sophisticated than a simple sex trafficking ring. It was meticulously designed for intelligence gathering, blackmail, and the manipulation of power. Victims were not just victims, they were bait, used to ensnare powerful individuals. Hidden cameras and recording devices were not just tools of exploitation, they were instruments of coercion. This explains his seemingly inexplicable ability to evade justice for so long, to slip through the cracks of a system that should have held him accountable. He held secrets as a shield, protecting himself from scrutiny and prosecution. He operated in plain sight, moving freely among the elite, all while systematically collecting compromising material that could be used to control and manipulate others. The systemic failures, the patterns of protection, the deliberate overlooking of his crimes, these weren't accidental oversights, they were by design, a carefully orchestrated scheme to shield him from accountability and protect those who benefited from his activities. The story we weren't told, the truth that has been deliberately suppressed, implicates the system itself, revealing a network of corruption and complicity that extends far beyond one man. The so-called Epstein list isn't a single document but a collection of names from flight logs, court records, and testimonies. These names include presidents, royalty, tech billionaires, politicians, academics, and Hollywood figures. Yet media coverage of these names has been limited and carefully managed. Many of these figures are connected to the very outlets reporting on them, creating a chilling effect. The public remains largely unaware of the full scope of Epstein's network. Flight logs and victim testimonies place powerful men at Epstein's properties during the abuse. Instead of investigating these men, the focus often shifts to discrediting victims. The list matters because it shows Epstein was a service provider to a powerful clientele. His crimes were enabled and shared by a network of elites. Limited coverage contains the scandal, protecting institutions and reputations. The silence is intentional, a system designed to protect the powerful. Jeffrey Epstein's crimes weren't confined to a Caribbean island. The scope of his offenses extended far beyond the shores of Little St. James. They spanned the world's most powerful cities, weaving a complex web of exploitation and abuse that touched the lives of countless victims. These metropolises served as key nodes in his network, facilitating the movement of individuals and resources. His New York mansion, a lavish residence just steps from Central Park, was more than just a home. It was a hub for abuse, a place where unspeakable acts were perpetrated under the guise of wealth and privilege. He operated with impunity in London and Paris, trafficking victims across international borders to serve the desires of his powerful friends and associates. These cities provided a veneer of respectability, allowing him to move freely and conduct his illicit activities with relative ease. The international scope of his operation made it exceedingly difficult for any single law enforcement agency to effectively investigate and stop him. Jurisdictional boundaries and complex legal frameworks provided ample opportunities for him to evade justice. In Florida, his deeply controversial 2008 plea deal effectively shut down a federal investigation that had the potential to expose his entire network and bring his accomplices to justice. This deal allowed him to continue his crimes for years to come. His New Mexico ranch, a sprawling and isolated property, served as another secluded site for abuse, far removed from public scrutiny. The ranch was complete with a private airstrip, facilitating the discreet transport of victims and associates to and from the property. The global scale of his operation demonstrated the sophistication of his methods and the level of protection he enjoyed from powerful individuals and institutions. The fact that he was able to traffic victims across international borders for so many years without significant intervention raises deeply troubling questions and suggests a level of complicity that demands further investigation. Each location, New York, Florida, New Mexico, Paris, London, and the Virgin Islands, served as a stage for the same heinous crimes, each playing a distinct role in facilitating his global network of abuse. This geographic diversity was not accidental. It was a deliberate and strategic choice, carefully designed to cater to a global elite and make his network as resilient and difficult to dismantle as possible. The island, Little St. James, was just a symbol, a microcosm of a much larger problem. The web of deceit and exploitation was worldwide, reaching into the highest echelons of power and influence. Jeffrey Epstein's reach was as vast as it was protected, a testament to the power and privilege that allowed him to operate with impunity for so long. Epstein's empire was built on silencing victims and controlling the powerful. He targeted vulnerable girls, using money and threats to keep them quiet. Legal harassment and private investigators intimidated anyone who spoke out. Victims were forced to recruit others, trapping them in a cycle of abuse and silence. Epstein's legal team buried victims in litigation, crushing their will to fight. He meticulously documented everything, using hidden cameras as blackmail. This created a system of mutually assured destruction. No one dared turn on him. He cultivated legitimacy through donations to elite institutions, expanding his influence. Powerful people sought him out, seeing him as a connector and asset. Fear and utility made him untouchable. He silenced the weak and controlled the strong, creating a perfect ecosystem for his crimes. The system protected him because he was useful. Epstein's silence and control ensured his crimes flourished for years. Epstein's methods resembled classic intelligence operations, a sophisticated honey trap. He lured powerful targets into compromising situations, secretly recording them for blackmail. Many believe he was connected to intelligence agencies, possibly Mossad, given Ghislaine Maxwell's family ties. This theory explains his unexplained wealth and extraordinary protection. If he held compromising material on officials, he was too dangerous to prosecute. The 2008 plea deal may have been the result of pressure from unseen forces. Epstein wasn't just a predator, he was an information broker dealing in secrets. His global network, meticulous record-keeping, and psychological manipulation were straight from a spy's playbook. Whether he worked for himself or for an agency remains unanswered. Viewing his crimes through the lens of intelligence explains his impunity far better than the official story. The origin of Epstein's fortune remains a mystery. Officially, he managed money for billionaire Leslie Wexner, but the relationship was murky. Epstein wasn't a licensed advisor and had no clear qualifications. His wealth far exceeded what he could have earned legitimately. Speculation points to money laundering, hidden sources, or intelligence funding. Epstein used offshore accounts and shell corporations to obscure the money trail. After his death, his estate was valued at over $600 million with no clear source. The money may have been payment for compromising material or services to powerful entities. The financial black hole is key to understanding the operation, and remains the most protected secret. Epstein's decades of crime were enabled by a network of protection. The 2008 non-prosecution deal, brokered by Alexander Acosta, was just one example. Acosta admitted he was told to back off because Epstein belonged to intelligence. Law enforcement repeatedly failed to act on credible tips. Federal investigations were shut down, and state-level deals kept him out of court. Epstein's legal team, including high-profile lawyers, attacked victims and intimidated journalists. The system protected him because he was useful, providing services, blackmail, and access. His associates had a vested interest in his freedom and silence. The failure to bring him to justice was the system working as designed. Epstein was a cog in a machine that protected itself. Epstein's death in a Manhattan jail is shrouded in mystery. Officially ruled a suicide, the circumstances raise serious doubts. Guards fell asleep, cameras malfunctioned, and he was taken off suicide watch. The autopsy revealed injuries more consistent with strangulation. Many believe he was murdered to protect powerful secrets. Epstein faced a trial that threatened to expose his entire network. His death silenced the one man who knew everything. The motive for murder was clear: protecting reputations and institutions. Whether suicide or assassination, his death buried the truth. The final crime was silencing the key witness, ensuring the full story would never be told.